Sometimes, guys, the church finds itself to be an almost entirely human enterprise, very disconnected and devoid of the presence of God in a very real, concrete, experiential way. This is where the church is today, guys. Man-made rules, man-made doctrines, man-made institutions, man-made buildings, man-made rituals. All these things really meant to be like bookmarks and symbols that represent the real thing, but are not the real thing themselves. Those things can be good as an underpinning, right? They can be good as an arrow that points us to the thing. But when we forget that they are a symbol, they are a surface thing, they are representative, they are meant to draw us into God, then those things can become God for us. And then we can really find that we are interacting with an almost entirely human enterprise. We're listening to our pastor's knowledge that he got from a Bible college that really teaches biblical principles from theologians who have their own ideas based on scripture, which is based on people hearing God. And then you can find that at times the church is by many degrees distracted and delineated very far away from the real presence of God, right? Presence of God, we can have all these layers and barriers between us and the presence of God, really entering into the presence of God, really knowing God personally. This has been the goal from the beginning. All the covenants, all the things that God has given, all the revelations were to draw us back into relationship with God. Finally, Jesus comes to give the perfect word. Didn't write a damn thing down. Lived a life to show us what it looks like to live in relationship with the Father. Said, now I want you to live in relationship with the Father as I have. Didn't write notes, didn't write a 5-point model, didn't write a 10-point step process. He said, you need the Spirit. He gave us the Spirit. He said, the Spirit will lead you into this reality. And what have we done? Slide the Spirit to the side, slide relationship to the side, make it about an institution that facilitates God for you, that doesn't actually always know God itself, but it knows the things of God and the auxiliary and the trappings and the symbols and the rituals and the practices and the truths, but can sometimes find that in all of those things, it doesn't have God at all. And today, that is where the church is. That's why it's taken me 40 years to actually come back to any kind of real knowing of God myself, because the institutions, the church institutions, the Christian religion I was involved in didn't know how to help me do that. Somehow, by the pure grace of God, I got within me this hunger to really know God myself. And I found at every turn the church was oppositional to that path and that desire in me. I didn't really understand it because I was doing the things the church said I should do to know God, and yet through those things I couldn't know God, and I had to actually fight against those things to know God. I found that the rituals and truths and ideas and practices and buildings were helpful to prepare me with a good head knowledge concerning what it looks like to know God. And so I had a good picture, but I couldn't move into the practical reality of it in those things, through those things and those people involved in those things. So I had to really fight hard and struggle and wander through the desert and almost die on my own, trying to find God for myself. But guess what? God was there. God was honoring that desire because he put that desire in me. And he's finally brought me into a much deeper reality of knowing him. And it brings all the things that scripture says it brings: peace, love, joy, goodness, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness. A real direct hearing of God that really directs my life on a day-to-day basis in very practical, real, important, experiential ways. The church today, guys, has a very superficial, superfluous, symbolic understanding and relationship with God. I can tell you, how do you know? The further we grow from God, the further we grow from his grace and goodness, gentleness, tenderness, loving heart. A church that doesn't let you make your choices and has to control everything, hyper control everything, that's a man-made institution. It's toxic. It's hateful, it's dogmatic, it's controlling, it is crushing, and it's why people are leaving the church. But it's also why people still want God, because we have a deep innate hunger for God himself. And I think deep down we know when we are participating with empty rituals and religion, and when we are really touching the face of God himself. So hey, make your own conclusions about all of this, but in my experience, looking at the church throughout its history, there have been many different times where the church has come to such an utter place devoid of God's real presence, and an inability to lead people into God's presence, because that was no longer the priority. And that's where the church is again today. All right. See ya. Know what I mean, Vern? I'm walking a different path, baby. I'm walking a path towards God. And it's a path that's led me out of the institutional Christian church and religion at this point in time. Now, I hope to find a church and help found a church that actually has knowing God at the center again. But guys, I don't think you'll find that in many churches today. It'll be there to some degree or another at times, but you'll find that most churches, pastors are more concerned with their own prominence and financial stability and their building and their institutions, their organizations, their programs than they are people in knowing God. So, hey, there you go. Love you. Bye.